Very good to have you on the program today, John. I know you're a busy man, but can you introduce yourself to us, John?
Yes, I will. So I'm a chartered accountant, and I've been a chartered accountant for over 25 years. I was born and bred in Gisborne. My both parents were born and bred in Samoa, in Savaii. My dad from the village of Whanga, and my mum was born in Safotu, and she has roots in Matavai and Le Whangaulii. And so I've been in Auckland for around about 22 years. Before that, I was in Gisborne. And after Gisborne, I went to Hamilton, where I trained at Wintech to be a chartered accountant. And that's where I got my chartered accountancy.
Very good to have you on the program today, John. Now, did you ever ask your parents, why Gisborne, not Auckland?
Well, funny you say that. Because I was born there, I didn't really ask that question. But every time we came up to Auckland for the church, my parents were heavily involved with the Methodist Church and Samoan Methodist back in the day.
Hmm.
We'd come up to Auckland for a lot of church conferences and to see family. And it was only then when we came up to Auckland that we wondered, why the hell were we doing in Gisborne, of all places?
Well, did they finally come out and say, why Gizzy?
Yes, they did. So how we ended up in Gisborne was that my mother, she came over from Samoa as a nanny when she was only 17 with a Palangi family. There was a guy called Leo Fowler who was a Palangi British descent, and he needed the services of a girl from the village of Safotu, and she ended up going on the Taufoa. You may have heard the boat
Yes,
that
the
was
boat.
travelling, around 1952. The month was September. She was only 17, and she went with this Palangi family to look after their 3-year-old child. And then on the way before she got to Auckland, she actually turned 18. It's a long story, but yeah, that's Leo Fowler was setting up a radio station in Gisborne, and
Wow.
that's where she started her journey in New Zealand.
And was your father there at the time as well?
I'm not too sure his story because he was a bit of a, to be honest, he was opposite of my mum. My mum was very Christian, Methodist Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was, I shouldn't say the religion, but he was a different denomination.
Yep. Yep.
And I do believe that he probably arrived about mid 1950s and landed in Auckland in Grey Lynn. And um, back in those days, as you know, it was a lot different in those days. I think in New Zealand and Auckland in the 1950s for Pacific Islanders, it was the land of milk and honey. And there was some stories I heard of my dad, but obviously he met mum in Auckland and
Yep.
started to walk the straight and narrow.
Ah, well, it takes a bit of time, John, as you know, for us men to say, "Okay, ma'am, you are the boss," and we walk that fine line, eh, John?
Are you talking from experience?
Is what I heard from some people. Anyways, thank you for sharing your story with us this afternoon, John. Now let's get into the business. What are the most common accounting mistakes you see, and how can they be avoided, John?
I would say I think everything comes down to a plan. And I think for whether you're running a small business or an organization that might be a charitable or a non-profit organization, maybe even a church, maybe even your family household, everything must start with a plan. So that would my first answer to that would be number one, a plan, which is usually in the form of a budget, tracks expenses and income, and then you forecast it forward. But then the next step would be actually have a measuring tool. And for a business or an organisation, a measuring tool in accounting terms would be the use of accounting software, something like Xero or MYOB, a couple of examples. But I think from that point, it's this action of measuring, using that tool to measure performance, and then going back to the budget and comparing, and then from them taking action. Those are probably the first three. So number one, plan, budget. Number two, use an accounting software or measuring tool. And the third is to compare it to the budget and take action.
I'm going to jump a little bit off script here, John, and ask you this. Are apps, accounting apps, helpful at the moment, or do you get scared from these apps coming up?
I wouldn't say I get scared, but you might get scared. The reason why I don't get scared, the only reason is because I've been using them for quite a long time. Xero, I've been using that since 2009 when it first came out.
Yep.
They actually came out and they marketed it to chartered accountants like myself, who were running their own accounting businesses, and it just grew from then. And so nowadays Xero is very user friendly, and to the young generation, which is my kids or your kids, those apps is just bread and butter basically. It's like watching TV in the old days.
That's right. And it's making life easier for everybody, John.
It's a lot easier, and that's the thing with technology. It's moving so fast. It's at lightning speed. It's basically the internet is on steroids at the moment, and now we have so many. The technology is moving so fast. It's affecting accountancy as well. And so it's a good point you made there.
Now, when I say, are you scared, John? Are you scared of the future that these apps can overtake accountants?
No, I'm not actually, because I was at a conference only 2 weeks ago, the GAP conference, which actually is like a consultancy education thing for accountants. And because, as you know, accountants they're ahead. They like to be ahead, and so we like to look ahead and see the effect of AI in the future. And we did get the news that our job is safe, but they use the word is that AI will help it. All those boring parts of the job will be obviously overtaken, and our job will be quite similar to your job, actually. Being able to go online like this and talk to the public. And so all those soft skills that you have an abundance of, those are the kind of guys we want to be, that'll flourish as accountants in the future, because there'll be all that processing stuff will all be done.
That's right. All right. Thanks, John. What advice would you give small business owners and organizations about managing their finances?
Just managing the finances. Let's see. Probably the main thing is just understanding that budget or that plan going forward, and having a number or a measure for that. The expenses, managing expenses is important, but also having the plan for the income that's coming in, because obviously profit is the main KPI to look at. If you don't make profit, you won't stay in business. So I just think it always comes down to that same formula that I mentioned before: planning, measuring, and then taking action.
That's right, John. What are some of the recent changes in the environment and the business owners need to be aware of?
I think interest rates are dropping, as we know. You may have heard of the OCR, and that's good for everyone, not just people in business. But I suppose with people in business, it's even better, because with the drop of the interest rates, it'll prevent the inflation. So our inflation rate over the last 5 years has been very high, around about 6 to 7%. But now we're looking forward to it dropping now, so that things are more affordable, and the income we're getting in our wages isn't, the value isn't dropping. So I think for going forward in maybe 2 years, couple of years time, definitely next year, we should have a better environment to operate in, and for consumers as well.
All right. You know, when you're starting a small business, you've got this idea. When do you need an accountant? Because I looked it up on the website, the government website, and it says if you're earning 60,000 or less a year, you don't need to do GST. Is that correct, John, or not?
That is correct.
So when do you need an accountant to come in and work on your finances if you're a small business?
I think straight away. However, obviously with GST, if you are trading over 60 grand, it becomes easier to be able to afford an accountant to guide you through. But I do encourage people to speak to an accountant straight away, because it's not what you know, it's what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I believe there's so much help out there that our small business owners are not aware of, John. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's also a lot of free services you can tap into from IRD.
Yep.
And obviously, at most people, there's Dr. Google as well. So Dr. Google, if you Google things, you can get the answers. And, you know, there's a lot of resources out there. But it is good to have the advice at the right time, which is usually at the beginning, because it gives you an indication of the traps and pitfalls that could trip you up. The last thing a business owner wants to do is to be starting a business without a plan, and starting a business without being able to measure where that business is actually performing at, and where it's going to go.
All right, John, thank you for that. Can you share a memorable case where good business practices saved a business?
Yeah, there's quite many instances in my time. Obviously, I've been doing this for a while, but there's so many instances of people not having records or sufficient records. I think for organisations and small business, they have to make good records. That's the key if there is an issue with, for example, with IRD. If you don't have good records, it's very hard to convince them or to explain to them why certain actions were taken. So for those organisations that are making decisions in relation to their accounting, their tax, minutes and recordings are very important. Can't stress that. Just only recently, I've been working with organisations where IRD were probing into it, and they do really look at the history of an organisation. So it's important for them to keep proper records and have the use and consider spending spending costs that are going to benefit the organisation in the future, so that they don't get tripped up with the authorities.
All right, thanks, John. Finally, what tips would you like to give on how to build a business, a successful business and an organisation?
I think having that business, like I go back to the same thing, speak to a chartered accountant as early as possible, have a business plan, get as much free resources as possible. Again, business plan, budget, a system, measuring the system, and then reporting, and then taking action. And that you can't go beyond that. That's very important.
All right, John. And finally, this afternoon, it's one thing to talk about it, one thing to put it into practice. Hey, when is the best time for our people and our business owners to put this into action?
Probably yesterday.
I think the other thing that people are scared of, John, is paying for the services. Why is it an important expense to have an accountant by your side when you own a business?
Because the other side of the coin is that if you don't, it could cost you thousands or hundreds of thousands of money if you do it the wrong way. And yeah, chartered accountants aren't cheap, and they may come across as not cheap. However, the other side of the coin, in order for your business to be successful, you need people that are trained in this area. It's sort of like for example, recently I was looking at a house, and I got a friend of mine who's a builder to go through the house. And when I thought this house was really good, but then when he went through, he was looking at it, saying, "Oh, this is wrong. This is wrong." And he's picking out all these mistakes, and I thought, "Oh, far out. I don't know if I want this house now." But I mean, you don't know what you don't know, basically. And there are certain there's a reason why there's a profession called chartered accountant, because they do guide you, and they prevent those pitfalls. We can help interpret those numbers in a language that you can understand. And so, yeah, I wouldn't like people to see my services as a cost, or like an investment. And that would be my advice on that one.
All right. And how can the people get a hold of your services, John?
I've got a phone number. Can you give phone numbers out on this?
Of course.
Okay. So 021 335 215. There's 021 335 215. Jon Su, chartered accountant, interpreting your numbers in a language that you can understand.
It's been a pleasure having you on the program this afternoon, John. Thank you very much for lava. Alofa atu na yo mantua, and also look after yourself and have a splendid afternoon. And of course, White Sunday, have you done your purchasing for the kids, John?
Not at this stage, but now that you've mentioned it, starting to get those memories back from going to White Sunday and seeing my dad in the kitchen making the breakfast. And when the whole year I've never seen him in the kitchen once. So those are good old days of the White Sunday. And all the best. Thank you, Te Lava.
Yeah,
for that. I look forward to hopefully coming back on the program to give some more tips in the future.
Thank you very much, John. No sunga ya Jon Su. O se tusi o se chartered accountant wa lava ia le tausi ngau tusi o lau bisinisi lai titipe o se whaala potonga te le e mawhai ona fsosoni atu le tautu ala sunga ya Jon Su. Steimi o le toi evantu leo lana numera mo le sila fia le pa ia male mamano le tato tano.